Bitcoin to $190,000. That is what one indicator is showing, as Bitcoin is up almost 5% over the last 24 hours, currently trading at $66,600. How high will Bitcoin go? Will we put in a new all-time high before the show is over today? We have James Seyffart, a ETF analyst from Bloomberg, joining us to talk about everything with the Ethereum ETF, what to expect, what kind of inflows. Why did Galaxy Digital just buy $1 billion worth of ETH? Are we going to see more of that from the other ETF filers like BlackRock, Fidelity? And also, who is the next blockchain to get an ETF? Is it Solana? Is it XRP? Is it Avalanche? Is it Cardano? Is it Polkadot? We're going to ask James those questions. We also have some news on Polygon, Bitcoin Nashville coming around the corner, and some Bitcoin integrations with some altcoins. We'll discuss that and much, much more on today's episode of Sin City Crypto. Let's go.
It's your boy, Big Rob, back in the house. Welcome to Sin City Crypto. If it's your first time checking us out, we're the entertainment-focused cryptocurrency channel. We take old, boring, stale information, repackage that whole thing up in a fun and sexy way. I am beside myself because the man beside me has said that, do you think we'll get a new all-time high by the end of the show? Do you think that there's any real chance that we go from 66,000 to 74?
We've seen $10,000 candles, bro.
In 1 hour?
Yeah. Yeah. Are you not bullish enough?
No.
Be careful.
I'm not bullish enough for
a
trillion dollar asset, $1.3 trillion asset.
It would actually only be $8,000.
Move from
$7,600. That would be the move.
$7,600,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Okay.
I'm not saying it's going to happen. It's just
11% move in 1 hour.
Listen, Bitcoin 66.6 up 4.8% over the last 24 hours, 15% over the last 7 days. Are these the ETFs? Were they buying yesterday? Are they buying today? Are we getting? Do people have some insider news on a potential massive announcement at Bitcoin Nashville? If you want to know whether they're going to have that announcement, make sure to stay tuned to our channel and be subscribed, because we got our team out there in Bitcoin Nashville, and they will be giving you updates in real time, whether it's on X or YouTube, as far as what is happening, what big announcements are going to be made at Bitcoin Nashville. So make sure you subscribe to our channel. And also, if you're watching us on X, welcome, share the post. Let's get this out here. And again, we do have James joining us in about 30 minutes. So why did I decide and just make up the 190K level out of my behind? This is from Cointelegraph. Bitcoin's crazy tight Bollinger Bands point to a 190K Bitcoin price target. Bollinger Bands measure the volatility, essentially, with two standard deviations to the upside and to the downside of a asset's price action, right? When the bands start to get tight, volatility is decreasing, and a big move tends to follow right after. Now, you got to figure, is the move going to be to the upside? Is the move going to be to the downside? That is when you really dig in to the technical analysis, which is what we'll do here. But you take a look here. The last two times marked out on this chart, you have back in 2016, we saw tight Bollinger Bands, and we saw Bitcoin's price appreciate to pretty much the all-time highs, around $20,000, with a couple dips since then. And then the very last time, was in July of 2023. And I do have the Bitcoin chart, the weekly here. And July 2023 was right around here, right? We saw these bands get really tight, and I'll throw these bands back on. We saw the bands get really tight, and then we saw a massive move from bottom to top of around 172%. Now, according to this article, if we get the same move, 190K Bitcoin is in play. How long will that take to play out? Who knows? But we know Bitcoin's price has been moving. We talked about Bitcoin on the daily, and I'll zoom out here, or I'll get rid of these Bollinger Bands so it's a cleaner chart. You talked about a potential bull flag. Well, we didn't stay in it for too long, because you can see here on this daily candle, this is a almost a 5% candle, as Bitcoin is currently trading above $66,600. The next level we need to take out would be around this double top we had here, right around 71.3. If we throw on our volume range profile, we can see here where is a lot of buying and selling happening right at the level we're at right now, around $67,700. Well, about 1,000 up. We saw a lot of buying and selling, right? A lot of action, a lot of orders being put in. Are we going to see buy pressure come in and bring the price back up to 71K? Which at that point, hey, we're only $3,000 off a new all-time high. What are your thoughts on the way Bitcoin's price is moving? Is there anything you can point to that could potentially be the reason why Bitcoin's price is appreciating? You think it's the Nashville event coming up, or do you have any other theory or thesis?
Well, where were we 3 weeks ago, right? We were right around the same range. And so it's not like we're not in price discovery, right? So a month ago, we were at 64,000. And 3 weeks ago, we were at 63,000. But why did we sell off? It was because of, well, the big headline was the Germany sell-off, right? We sold billions of dollars. What was the grand total for Germany? Do you remember? I know it was, 40,000 Bitcoin.
50,000
Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And so massive amount of sell pressure. And that was dumped on the markets in a extremely short time window, which the time window happened to line up with the downturn or at least the pullback on Bitcoin. And the pullback in itself, I mean, at the bottom was 54,000. And so when you look at, where were we a month ago? Well, we're the same spot, a little higher, but if you're asking me what has been the catalyst, selling's over. That's really the catalyst for me. And we're in a bull market, so now we're back on track. We've gone past that moment, and we do have the Mt. Gox sell pressure, but that's something we've been dealing with for the last 6 years. It's been an open discussion, and that's not being sold by one company, right? Germany sold all their Bitcoin. It wasn't like they gave their citizens each one Bitcoin and they were like, hey, sell it if you want. What we're seeing with Mt. Gox is that they're issuing out Bitcoin. They're not selling it firsthand.
Right.
And so you're not going to see these giant sell orders. Now,
just to clarify what you're saying real quick, and I know you said it, but just to put it in more layman's terms, they're not taking the Bitcoin they have in the estate, selling it, giving people cash. They're giving people their Bitcoin.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So completely different sell tactics here, right? Or at least the fundamentals of what's going on is that Germany just straight up dumped, 50,000 Bitcoin on the market, and of course there's going to be a downward sell pressure from that event. Now that's over. That's in the rearview mirror. Let's proceed as usual, and then not to mention, a lot of bullish catalysts as well. Let's not ignore what is here in front of us is that we have a former president. We have the Republican candidate going up for re-election, leading in the polls, that has been absolutely vocal when it comes to, hey, vote for me if you're for crypto. And he's going to speak at the Bitcoin Nashville here next week. And I mean, obviously, when the dude has talked about crypto before, I'm at a rally. I'm talking about X, Y, and Z. Oh, hey, by the way, I'm fighting for Bitcoin. I want Bitcoin to be made in America. The few sentences he said, the man's going to be on stage for, what do you think, 30 minutes? I mean, there's no set time yet, slot.
He likes to talk.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. So we're going to have nothing but viral clip after viral clip after viral clip, 30 minutes of it. We're not talking about two sentences that he just threw out in a rally. And so will he talk about bringing crypto back to America, crypto regulation, Gary Gensler? Perhaps we'll talk about bonds, strategic reserve of Bitcoin. The list goes on and on. The dude's going to talk for 30 minutes. He'll probably talk about Ethereum, NFTs. I mean, remember his NFTs were sold on Polygon and also on Ethereum. The first two on Ethereum, the last on Polygon. And so, how deep is this man going to go? Well, I think
so deep.
Hey, your boy's excited, man. I'm excited.
So you believe there's going to be a big announcement at the convention? If we know anything about Donald,
I don't think there's gonna be a big announcement. I think the dude's just gonna throw out big buzzwords, and then it's just gonna catch on like wow.
You don't think he's gonna make a campaign promise? Like, hey,
yeah,
if I get
he will, but he'll make it on the fly. This isn't some kind of like rolled out plan. Okay, here's an example. So
J.D. Vance will be there as well.
So yeah. Here's one thing. Well, this is what I think is gonna happen. Right? You have okay. So if we go back to yesterday's speech, he was talking about tips, right? So here in Nevada, this is a service industry, right? Entertainment capitals, and a lot of servers, taxi drivers, bellhops, everyone here.
Bottle girls.
Yeah, bottle girls, strippers, So, our fuel here, our gas token is tips in this city. And so Trump came, he was staying at his, and this was per his yesterday's speech. He stayed here at the Trump Hotel, had a waitress. And then she was all, he's over here having a natural conversation. And then next thing you know, she's all like, yeah, man, they be taxing the crap out of my tips. And he's like, really? And then he's just like, what if we didn't tax tips?
That became a campaign promise.
And then that was literally how it popped up. So the man is just sitting here shooting policies, right? He's just like, bah! He's just launching policies just because he's having a conversation. And you're telling me this dude gonna be on stage looking at 30,000, 40,000 people at a Bitcoin convention where everyone's chanting his name, and he's going to be like, how about no taxes on Bitcoin? like that's what I'm expecting, man. And so if there's going to be some strategic rollout of some policies, I don't think so. But I bet you he makes some promises on the fly and just going to make some kind of viral sentence that makes crypto pop off, right? Maybe he's all, you know what? I like to have two dual currencies. Maybe the first currency is going to be, the US dollar. And then the second currency would be Bitcoin. And it'll be like brother and sister. I don't know, man. I'm telling you that, I'm saying. Like, I wouldn't be surprised to see anything come out. Dude is launching his 4th NFT line. He is speaking at a Bitcoin convention.
Got a crap load of money in crypto.
He's got a lot of crypto, and who knows? Maybe even references that Trump token that he has. The one that we talk about here solemnly.
The maxis will go crazy,
bro. If he talks about that altcoin, Jesus Christ, man, where is that thing at anyway?
A lot of our community members have exposure to that, including everyone in this room.
Yeah. So you're talking about a market cap of $200 million on this MAGA Trump coin. At $6, and you look at where it was,
$17.
$16 here. And so, will he reference that one? If he does, that'll go parabolic. And so I think that after his speech, we're going to come back in the studio and be like, wow. Jesus Christ, look what happened after
prediction. We come back to the studio Monday. What is the price of Bitcoin? New all-time high? Don't be scared, man. It's okay.
But historically, the Bitcoin conventions haven't boded well. But, historically, okay, so 2 years ago, you had 3 years ago, El Salvador.
2022.
Yeah, El Salvador announced at the Bitcoin convention that they're going to have legal tender. But we still saw the price dump with that announcement. And that's pretty damn big, right? You have a nation state. I think we'll be over 70,000. I think we'll be at 72. I think that perhaps this weekend we go up, we hit that 72 mark, right where the previous all-time high was, and we kind of reject down and get back down to 70. That's what I think. That's after the convention though. That's a week and a half. Yeah, because a Monday after. Never mind. That's not even. I was thinking this weekend. You know what? I do think. I do think at that point, barring some bad news, barring some kind of event that would happen, maybe hopefully Trump gets to the convention. They out there trying to get the man, but.
I'm, and to be fair, this was during a bear market, correct? So I'm just looking at the Bitcoin chart from April 6th through the 9th is when that 2022 Bitcoin Miami conference was. And we saw Bitcoin during and after the event had a 15% drawdown. Now, again, I want to note this was in a bear market, right? And so naturally the prices were going down. So it makes total sense, but still, it's something interesting to keep an eye on. I do want to go back here just real quick before we move off of Bitcoin. So this bull flag looks like it's breaking out. The measured move here, my friends, would be 73,000. Call it 73K flat. That would be the move for this. If this breakout of this bull flag continues, new all-time highs, man. Now, how long is it going to take to get there? Who knows? But I think sooner rather than later. Something else that's broken out in a bad way is Microsoft. So a pretty big global, the largest IT outage, Robin, in the history of the world. I feel like Donald Trump here talking about everything is the best or the worst it's ever been, right? So now, why does this relate to crypto? I'll tell you in 1 second. European Central Bank says Swift outage affected real-time gross settlement system. Now, if you're not familiar, Swift is the messaging network that moves money and messages across borders, right? Then you have this. Crypto firms remain unaffected by Microsoft's crash. Banks and media hit hard. This was so bad, Robin, that they had to ground all flights. Every flight that was in the air was ordered to land. This was a nationwide IT issue. But guess what? Crypto, Bitcoin here, this post here from Senator Lummis. Do you know what form of currency hasn't been affected by widespread cyber outages? Bitcoin. Is this another thing we can point to, Robin, and say, look, this financial system is so out of date. We need an upgrade. And now we have another bullet in our back pocket that we can use if that conversation arises. Moreover, right, taking this thing a little deeper, you think about cloud infrastructure, right? You talk about a majority of it's ran by AWS and Google Cloud for the most part. You have products that are available out there right now, like ICP, that allow 100% decentralized on-chain cloud storage. That has nothing to do with the intertwined system of the Microsoft, the CrowdStrike, and the other two I mentioned. Is this another reason why people should be really looking at cryptocurrency and blockchain the way it was meant to be, is to revolutionize finance? And what are your thoughts on the situation here?
This is just a reminder of the problems of centralization, right? Now, you can look at remedies like, hey, decentralization fixes this, right? And that's why they always say Bitcoin fixes this. And I think a lot of that premise behind Bitcoin fixes this, that whole slogan, is the fact that it's because it's decentralized, not controlled by one entity. So there's not one point of failure. And so decentralized, which means not one person, one company controlling it, or a small group of individuals. And that's what you get with centralization. Centralization is that it's one area that controls, right? But what we saw here was that one area failed, right? That one area, you have modern technology centralized into one company, which is Microsoft, or what was that what was the cause of it? That other company was like CrowdStrike. And so that's another centralized thing. How dependent was Microsoft on CrowdStrike? Obviously, I don't know any of the details as far as the intricacies of what their involvement were with Microsoft, but it wasn't like Microsoft is using 1,000 different service providers that are comparable, that are offering the same services as CrowdStrike. So basically, when you centralize, you have very, very compressed amount of points of failure. You have one, maybe 2 or 3 points of failure. We see it with the grid, right? With power outages. And we saw, it was like 10 years ago, we had a power outage, like a third of the United States power went out. And that was because the grid was very centralized to a couple points. And so if you look at technology in the same way and you say, hey, if everything's centralized and everything's running on a couple centralized points, Microsoft, perhaps Apple for mobile communications here in North America, Samsung, globally, you start to realize that if there's any, systemic failures in one company or one area, it takes everything out. And that's the beauty of crypto, is that decentralization, is that there's not one company or one miner or one exchange or one wallet, or the decentralization is what powers crypto, what makes it so attractive. And that's why when this happens, you say, hey, we don't have to rely on one mining company, because if you shut down that mining company in Texas, you know what, or in China or in New York, you know what, there's another 1,000 of them. And
we already lived through it. The China ban.
Yeah.
Over 40% of all the hash rate came from China. They outlawed it. And guess what? Did Bitcoin go down? Did transactions stop? No, absolutely not. What do governments here in the U.S. do, Robin, when companies get too big? They label them a monopoly, and then they sue them, and then they make them break up. That's what they're trying to do to Amazon right now.
Mm-hmm. Like an ex-wife.
Yeah. And so what
Yeah.
What people
sue them and make them break up. Take their money.
This goes so much deeper, so much deeper. Think about everything that is ran on the internet, everything on IT on the back end, right? Airlines had to be grounded. Think about all the dispatch. 9/11 services were down, right? People couldn't call 911. They couldn't get, their systems were down. You talk about the supply chain, dispatchers for truckers, routes, new orders, whatever the case may be, those are all down. Communications are down. And so this is something that cannot happen, yet it has happened because of all the reasons that this man said. There are solutions, and the solutions are on the other side of the web, which is Web3. And so I'm looking at projects, Robin. Chainlink comes to mind. Arweave comes to mind. Filecoin comes to mind. ICP comes to mind. These are all projects, a few of them, that have the infrastructure in place that you can decentralize and not have to worry about, well, crap, if someone does a wrong update, it's going to crash the entire global supply chain or the entire global transportation system.
If you have a bank, if you have, if you have an airline, whatever it is, you have some form of communication, whatever technology that was affected today, if you are looking forward and you're doing crisis management, you're over here saying, like, you're saying to your team, like, hey, what do we have to do to prevent this? And well, one, you can just lay your faith in Microsoft and say, hey, they said they're not going to have that happen again. They've updated the code. This is why it won't happen again. Let's trust them.
I trust
that's one question that an industry or a company would ask, right? You would say, like, hey, what can we do to prevent this? Well, we'll just take their word for it. And well, we know how that goes. And so you're going to find a lot of companies reaching out to find remedies, to find even just a backup, right? Or what if your infrastructure is still run by Microsoft, but in the event that you have an outage, we switch over to a blockchain, or we leverage a company or a network that can handle that can handle that amount of traffic, that can do the same thing that Microsoft does, but in the event of a failure, here we go. And so I think that moving forward, perhaps 3-6 months from now, I think we'll find a lot of big partnerships that'll come out of this, right? Because you're going to find companies that got hit hard and now are looking to not have that happen again. And we know that there's one thing that stays up and running, and that's Bitcoin, and and the major cryptos as well. I mean, there are a few outliers, of course. We can always point fingers, but essentially, crypto doesn't go down.
Robin, I feel like there's one phone call that should have been made when they had these IT issues. That was to our channel sponsor, CAMS. Blue Wire Technology is literally what they do. Networking, IT, cybersecurity. That is how we have been able to stream today. Although the networks have all been down, they're the best in the game. There are sole IT and internet channel sponsors. A big shout out to CAMS. Visit bluewiretech.com if you want to learn more how they can potentially help your business. I want to take a look at how the rest of the cryptocurrency markets are doing. So we take a look at ETH approaching 35. Let's just call it $3,500, up 2.84% over the last 24 hours, 11.5% over the last 7 days. But the big gainer here in the top 10, at least in the last 24 hours, is Solana. $168. Now, we did do a Solana video this morning. That'll be released in about an hour and a half. And we've updated our price prediction for Solana and why $1,000 might have been selling it too short. You're going to want to watch the video to find out why. But Solana is at a very key inflection point here. I went over it on the chart, and I'll go over it here with you really quick. And I want to get your thoughts here, Robin. So Solana against the dollar. On the daily, we've been on this, we've had this trend line here, and I'll draw it out for everyone really quick. So we've essentially had this trend line, right? I'll draw it right here. That's been intact since November of 2023, and we were almost in a head and shoulders, got invalidated. We came back above, broke above that. We created a little bit of price action consolidation right on the trend line, and then we broke above it. If we can get some follow through with volume, which we do have volume on the daily here, $187 Solana is our next pit stop. And so, what are your thoughts on Solana, Robin? And we're actually going to ask James when he joins us in a little bit whether he thinks Solana is next in line for an ETF. But what are your thoughts on where Solana's price is now, and just your overall thoughts, your base case?
Well, the thing is that Solana got to its previous all-time highs, that $250 range, before it had market dominance. It was just like the fun new crypto that was crazy fast, right? Wasn't like everyone was building on Solana. Wasn't like everyone was launching NFTs on Solana. There were some, but last bull market, what was the big narrative, right? It was ETH and the ETH gas fees and the ERC20 tokens and the DEXs on ETH and Uniswap and Aave, and it was all ETH. Now, there was money being made elsewhere. We saw the epic rise of Solana. We saw the rise of Cardano. We saw BNB, rise and never fall. And we also saw, we saw lots of crypto projects make new all-time highs, but they didn't really have that big share that Ethereum did, right? And so now we're in a new bull market. We're in the beginning stages of the bull market, and we're in a scenario where Solana is kind of the king of utility right now, right? Everyone's using Solana. The Jupiter swap is exploding, and you're seeing all these meme coins launched on there. You got the ETF rumblings or rumors, and so if we get to the same point where the amount of interest that we had last bull market comes back around and retail comes in and people are just throwing money at what they're using, Solana is going to eclipse its previous all-time highs, not by a little, but by a mile, right? $1,000 is what you said. I think that's very reasonable. Now, that's just because people are using it. And the activity, the TVL, it's nobody else even comes close to it as far as how much percentage gains they've had. Ethereum is still king, but I mean, they're losing that race, or at least they're losing that head start they have, right? That lead. And well, the competitor is here is Solana. People are interested in it. So previous all-time high, I think, will get crushed. Absolutely crushed.
Yeah, I agree. Without further ado, I want to bring on James Seyffart. We had the pleasure of meeting him down in Austin. Great guy. It was exciting to meet him in person. So we have him on the show today. I feel like we always get lucky with the timing, right? We brought him on right before the Bitcoin ETF went live. We're bringing him on right before the ETH ETF goes live, and we're happy to have him on. James, welcome back to the channel, my friend. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing today?
What's going on, guys? Good to see you again.
Your calendar must be filled to the brim, and so we want to thank you for carving out some time for us today, my friend.
Yeah,
James,
it's a little packed.
Yeah, I can only imagine. James, I want to start here. So obviously, July 23rd is the date we've been given for the ETFs to go live. Is that correct? Is that up to date, or is there new information that maybe I missed?
So that's pretty much set in stone. I mean, it's not 100% guaranteed, but yeah, that's what we're expecting to have happen, July 23rd.
And then, James, were you taken aback buy. And I know, the odds were like 20%, 25%, you and Eric. And then Monday rolled around, right? 2 days before the deadline. And it was like, and I saw your tweet. I was like, what? 75%? Like, what the hell happened? Can you maybe unpack that for us? And what's your thesis? And is this the SEC capitulating here on Ethereum?
Yeah. So, yeah, honestly, we were the week before we were talking. I was like in the process of potentially writing a note to even lower the odds from 20, 25 down to 10 or 15.
Oh.
We were never going to go below that. It's for the same reason when Bitcoin ETFs were happening, we never went above 90, just because there was always a chance of like some political actor higher up in the Biden admin or somewhere in government that could kind of like sway things, which is what we think happened with ETH, right? It didn't happen with Bitcoin. There were rumors that it might, and they might stop it. The opposite happened with ETH as far as we're concerned. Somebody came in and like was basically like, you guys can't stop this. So yeah, there's two theories here, right? Either it was the Biden admin that kind of stepped in and was like, look, polling doesn't look good if we do this. It just doesn't make sense. Or the other theory is like somebody in Congress basically put somebody to the screws. So depending on who you talk to, if you look at like one of the commissioners, they were Nancy Pelosi's right-hand man. So Jamie Lizaraga was Nancy Pelosi's right-hand man for like a decade in Congress. So there's a lot of connections there. So there's no way to know, but there was 100% a like essentially a 180 switch in the week before. And that week before was when the Congress was voting on SAB 121 and the market structure bill and all these different things. And then that was also right before that was when Trump started endorsing crypto. So it just the stars aligned for it to be kind of political for sure.
James, I remember a tweet you posted or a post you posted on X talking about how with the Bitcoin one, it was published, the commissioners, the 5 commissioners, right, including Chairman Gary Gensler, how they voted. And you noted that hadn't been released. Has that been released? Or if it hasn't, why do you think not?
It won't be released, actually.
Wow.
So usually the way that most things work with the SEC is it's done by delegated authority, which basically means like all the people that truly make up the SEC or what have you, like they're the ones that make the decision. They don't need the commissioners to vote and decide on every little thing they do. If they had to do that, nothing would ever get done, right? So they just delegate the authority to the people that are running those divisions. In the case of the Ethereum ETF, they delegated the authority and let them make the decision. What really happened is somebody told them what to do. And for the Bitcoin ETFs, they all voted on it. So we can see exactly where the 5 commissioners fell. We don't get to see that with ETH unless somebody challenges it, and nobody has challenged it or looks like they're going to, because it's not politically advantageous. So we don't know if it would have been 3-2 or 4-1 potentially, because I can pretty much guarantee that Caroline Crenshaw, who's a Democrat, was going to vote no. She actually wrote a dissent letter on the Bitcoin approval process, even so.
I remember that as well. All right, so James, I want to dig in here. So I'm sharing this post here from you. Table of Ethereum ETFs and their fees that are set to launch next week. Starting fee, a lot of them are at 0. Of course, not Grayscale, 2.5% as always. But how does this match up to what we saw with Bitcoin? And maybe if you want to dive deeper into this one. And it looks like the custodian also is Coinbase for a majority of these, except for 2 of them. What are your thoughts on the fees?
Yeah, the Coinbase custodian stuff is mostly expected. As far as Grayscale goes, I will point out they are the cheapest. They're doing a 0% on their mini trust, and their post fee waiver is going to be 0.15%. So they are going to be the cheapest provider, but that's going to be what's known as a spin-off, kind of similar to what you guys would consider to be an airdrop, except like you're basically taking 10% of the assets out of ETH and then just basically spinning that off into shares of ETH. I actually did a thread on that today if we want to get into it. But I mean, I honestly thought they were going to lower the fees a little bit on ETH, but they didn't. That said, everyone for the most part is essentially like right in line with where their fees were when they launched the Bitcoin ETFs. There are some differences, but for the most part, it's like very much in line. And you also got to realize that these issuers, there's a lot of costs in doing this, so they're not making like the large margins on this. Like we even saw when I met you down at Consensus, Kathy Wood was on a stage and she partnered with 21 Shares, and she basically said they have, I don't even know, $3 billion in that fund, or a couple $2 billion in that fund. I'm not sure exactly what it is right now. And she's like, it's not profitable for us. So yeah. And I
So,
lied. They have
so
$18 billion in that fund. So just to
damn,
put
that's a lot.
so they're
Well,
saying they're at 21 bips of fees, they're saying they're not really profitable, which it might just mean it's not as profitable as what she's used to getting. But for the
Right.
most part, she's saying we're not really earning much money. And for that reason, they dropped out of the ETH race. So basically 21 shares is on their own. They're not partnered with ARK.
Yep.
ARK is not in the name of their filing.
yeah, I think what we saw was a lesson learned with the Bitcoin ETF from Grayscale. That were launching the mini trust, and they saw a flight of all their customers and asset holders or shareholders leave and go to competitors like BlackRock. And so now, hey, why not? If you're not gonna stay in the ETH ETF through Grayscale because of the fees, why not just go from one product to another, a cheaper fee, instead of selling and going and starting a new account over at BlackRock and the other providers as well. Yeah.
I wanted to ask. So James, you know, you mentioned the thread, and I have it up here. So doing a thread on the situation for Grayscale spinoff because I've got a million questions on it. Talking about the mechanics will essentially be the same for the spinoff. Does that mean we could see less outflows from Grayscale? Maybe for the people watching that don't understand how this thing works. We know, and also this thing is also going to be you can't do in kind for redemptions, correct? It's still going to be the cash creates just like Bitcoin.
Yeah, before I do that, I do want to correct myself. ARKB has 3 billion. I was right initially.
You're
I
right.
was
Okay,
looking
3
at the
billion.
volume numbers. Okay, yeah. But yes, I do think the outflows are going to be a little bit less, both in absolute, like just because the trust is smaller, it's about $10 billion right now, whereas GBTC was like near 30.
Yeah.
But also because in a percentage basis, because there were so many bankruptcies tied up in GBTC. GBTC was at the center of so many issues across the entire ecosystem from like 2019 to like 2024, really. Like you name it, Genesis, Gemini, FTX, Celsius, BlockFi. They all had there was GBTC shares tied up in all of those in very different ways. So there was a lot of like forced sellers in that. I do think we're going to see meaningful outflows from ETH. I just don't think it's going to be nearly as bad as we were expecting or saw with GBTC. And I think launching ETH like they are, basically as a spinoff. So if you have $1,000 in their initial trust, ETH in this case, $900 will stay in that initial trust, and then 10% of that, or $100, is going to spin off into the new cheaper ETH ticker, which it's a great ticker. So Big Grayscale has both the ticker BTC and the ticker ETH, which will be interesting to see how that app potentially impacts flows and demand. So yeah, I just think overall it's unlikely to be as bad as we saw with GBTC.
What are you guys expecting for inflows? Maybe in the first week, in the first month. Obviously, I'm going to assume that we're not going to see Bitcoin style inflows, correct?
Yeah, but I mean, no, there's no way. So one of the things that I would say, the people they kind of like they look at what happened with the Bitcoin ETFs and they think it's just possible for everyone. And in reality, it's like that was the biggest, best launch in the history, like by an order of magnitude. So even if you do like some fraction of that, it could still be an extremely successful launch, which is what we expect. I think they could get like something like 20% of the flows over the first 6 months, potentially. That'll depend on how much money actually comes out of ETH, but we just aren't seeing the same level of demand or interest in these Ethereum ETFs that we were seeing with the Bitcoin ETFs and Bitcoin in general.
I think
So
even a modest
time will tell.
20% at the size of Ethereum's market cap or total valuation, it's less than a third of Bitcoin. So I mean, even a 20% of flows, I think would be a huge price shock for the token itself or for the Ethereum product. So I
Yeah,
think
the other thing I would say is I think it's likely to be like a slower burn too, right? Like, so the Bitcoin ETFs launched with this massive splash. I just don't think we're going to see that same sort of massive splash for Ethereum that we saw with that. We will see a bunch of inflows come in right off the bat. I just think it's going to be a little bit of a longer lead time, essentially, because it's to wrap your head around ETH specifically, like how it works, what is the one-liner pitch. It's a little harder to sell that than it is for Bitcoin. And honestly, just talking to clients and talking to these issuers that are talking to actual end investors and advisors, I'm just not seeing the same level of interest and demand for ETH, asking questions around ETH as we saw for Bitcoin. But I think that could change if we get to 18, 24 months out from now.
That makes sense. James, one thing I was super excited about was staking. Potential staking in the Ethereum ETF. We know that's not going to be part of it. My question here, James, is there a potential of staking being added? We know Commissioner Hester Peirce came out and said that is on the table. My question is, would it have to be a completely new process with new applications, or is this something they can just amend and add it into the existing ETFs once they go live?
Yeah, so yeah, exactly. Hester was interviewed by Zach on Coinage, and
Yeah.
she kind of said we can reassess, but it's kind of the same process that would be for in kind. So if you wanted to do in kind, where you could basically, as you mentioned before, like you could exchange ETH for the actual shares of the ETF or shares for ETH. Right now, you have to do that via cash. You can't actually do it with the underlying asset. You would need to go through another 19B4 process, which is that same process with all those deadlines about whether or not these things are going to list. Right now, Bitcoin ETFs are going through it to try and list options. That's a little different because it's not just the SEC. There's like 3 different agencies that have to make that decision, but they would have to do it for that. They would have to do it for in-kind in-kind creations and redemptions, and they would have to do it like you're hinting at for staking if they wanted to allow it. So if we get a new admin in 2025, I think it's possible that we could see staking. The other thing to say is, like, even if we do get staking, we have some staking ETFs in Europe, we have some in Canada. They're not, it's not 100% of the assets that are staked, because then if you had to meet creations or redemptions because people are pulling money out, like there's like a lead and lag time to get in and out of the staking protocol, right? So like you can only stake a certain percentage of the underlying assets. So if you're staking your full thing right now, what is it? It's just over 3%, I think, is the yield. So theoretically, you would only be able to stake like maybe, I don't know, 40% of the assets, 50% of the assets. So it won't quite be that high, even if we do allow staking. But I do think that's one reason why I think the flows, like you said, Ethereum is, like Rob said, Ethereum's like a little bit less than a third the size of Bitcoin. I think just the demand, like if you can invest in an underlying asset, for the most part, just the ability to do staking, the utility you get from having ETH and the other things you can do is one of the big benefits of it.
Yeah.
You kind of lose more of that in ETF wrapper than you lose of the utility of Bitcoin, because a lot of the utility of Bitcoin is store value and then obviously um, transactions. And like for the most part, like, okay, yeah, you can't do the transactions, you can't do medium of exchange, but you can do the store value aspect in ETF. Whereas, Ethereum, you get staking, you can get yield, and there's a lot of other utility that you get from actually holding the asset directly.
Yeah, I just think it's like we already see dividend returns on some ETF products like the S&P ETFs or dividend ETFs, and so I just say, like, hey, why not use the blockchain like it's designed, and it has a staking mechanism which secures a network. Why not pay out its users? So I just feel like it's a no brainer, and perhaps hey, let's start with the ETF, just straight up spot market, but. No, I don't know. I think in the same thing that we return dividends in ETFs already, why not incentivize users to use ETF and also pay them or reward them for doing so as well? Is that
Yeah,
something you kind of hear?
the issuers want to be able to do that. The SEC just isn't comfortable with, particularly Gary Gensler. He views stake. I mean, you can look at like multitude of lawsuits across multiple different exchanges. He views the staking as the service stuff as a securities offering. He's not comfortable with it. I personally think he's might try to say that staked ETH itself is a security.
Yeah.
I mean, right now, basically by approving this, we know that Ethereum itself is not a security. That's one of the things that comes out of this, as far as I'm concerned. He won't admit it officially, but implicitly, that's the assumption here. That said, he might still go after staked ETH. So um, I guess we'll have to wait beyond November to see what that looks like here in the U.S.
James, I want to talk a little bit about the Bitcoin ETFs, and then we'll finish up on maybe some potential who's next in line. But with the Bitcoin ETFs, we've seen an uptick in inflows over the last maybe 10 days, 10 trading days. We saw 3 days in a row, essentially, of over $300 million of inflows. Now, I read somewhere that the clearinghouses are about to start offering the ETFs to more of their retail clients. Where are we at as far as who has access to it and who is going to have access to it going into the second half of the year?
I mean, the short answer is I don't fully know.
Fair enough.
But the real answer is I've been hearing every month that like the clearinghouses, the wirehouses, the wealth platforms, they're going to turn these things on, and I haven't seen any evidence of it just yet. I think a lot of this buying recently has been a lot of dip buying. So anyone saying that the ETF holders were going to be weak hands, the exact opposite is true. We're at all new all-time highs as far as inflows in aggregate since these things launched. We're at just shy of 17 billion since they launched on January 10th, which is huge.
Yeah, that's
So, yeah. So for the most part, a lot of this has been retail. There are a lot of hedge funds here doing the basis trade with Bitcoin futures markets.
yeah,
So they're going long the ETFs and then they're shorting the futures market and basically earning the difference there.
yeah.
It's virtually risk-free for the most part. So that's that's how these things are being heavily used in one instance. And there's also a lot of retail. Anecdotally, from what we're hearing, you can look at 13F data, which tells us who's bought these things. And again, it looks like a lot of retail, a lot of small independent advisors. But those brokerage platforms you talked about, those wirehouses, they haven't like fully okayed these things for advisors to be able to buy for their clients, not yet. I think third, maybe fourth quarter is probably more likely. So we are in third, but I think talking more towards the fall into the winter is when we could see these big names like UBS, Morgan Stanley, Merrill Lynch, things like that, where these things could potentially get approved for purchase. But there's no guarantee that it even happens by then. It will happen eventually. It's just we have to wait. We'll see.
Now, when that does happen, James, do you think that the inflows from that will outpace or really tower over the inflows we've seen so far with the people that have the access to it now?
I mean, it's undoubtedly a potential future like catalyst for that, but I think the interest in most people have access that wanted access to it already.
Okay.
And even those people that we're talking about now, it's not like they're going to be buying and putting like 50% of their portfolio into this thing. They're going to put like 1%, 2%. There is a lot of money there. So even if like a fraction of their clients want to buy it and they only put, these advisors put, like I just said, 1%, 2% of their assets, it can be a meaningful amount of money. But again, it's not, I don't know. Could we see as much as we've seen come in over the next year? Potentially, yes, we could see the flows go up that high, but there's no way to gauge exactly what that looks like. But I think, yeah, I mean, our estimates before this year was I thought we'd see about 15 billion in the first year, and we're 6 months in and we're already almost hit at 17. So
Crazy.
we way undershot that. And if these things get
you
okayed, we
think the
should be way
acceleration?
wrong.
You think the acceleration of this picks up? You think because we've seen the volume compared to where it was on the ETF flows a couple months after launch. I don't remember exactly when the all-time highs were for volume, but do you think we pick up where we left off, kind of in the beginning, that euphoric stage, or do you think that it's more of this slow grind up, and as we onboard people, because historically with crypto we are in this quote unquote bull market phase if you look at these 4-year cycles. And so from our personal experiences from our side on crypto, it says that, hey, we're about to go parabolic here. Do you think that the ETFs are kind of lining up that way as well? Do you think that there's a lot more acceleration here as far as onboarding new users?
I think it'll be, I mean, it depends. If you get a model portfolio that like decides to put a chunk of their assets in here, so a model portfolio is typically like you have them at these big places like BlackRock and Merrill and they control like hundreds of billions of dollars. And if they decide that this model needs to have 5% of their assets in Bitcoin, in a Bitcoin ETF, all of a sudden that's going to be a huge inflow. I would say that I think it's more likely to be kind of like a consistent slow burn. I mean, when you see an ETF that's extremely successful, it's not like it takes in money immediately and then takes off. Like for the most part, the assets grow on a rather steady basis. So there's consistent, steady inflow into the space, and that largely has to come from people just consistently allocating when they get paychecks and things like that. So that's normally how ETFs in general are going to show their success. It's not like I know in crypto it tends to, like in traditional finance, it's like escalator up, elevator down at times, and you just kind of have to go back and forth. But like in crypto, I mean, if you look at it, like a lot of the
elevator's broken. It just falls.
The positive goes up. Yeah, it also goes up too. I mean, you look at some of the candles here in bull markets. It's like you take out a couple of days, and all of a sudden you are nowhere near the level of prices that we're at now. So
it's like that. It's like that Willy Wonka elevator.
Yeah.
Zoom, zoom, zoom. Oh man,
Yeah.
James, we know your time is very valuable, so I'll kind of end it on this. You know, a lot of the people in the crypto space, it's always what's next, what's the next one, what's the next one. So I want to ask you, what's your gauge on the next one? A lot of talk about Solana, a lot of talk about XRP with the court case coming in. Some talk about Dogecoin, the first meme coin ETF.
We did get the Van Eck did file the ETF application as well.
Van Eck and 21 shares have both filed. Yeah.
So I guess my question here, James, and Rob and I have had this conversation on air, but obviously you're the expert here. Is we've talked about, hey, futures trading, right? I believe we talked about this with you. Bitcoin ETH are on the futures market for 2 years. Okay, we're tracking the price. Now we'll approve a spot ETF. Could there be a scenario where we don't have a futures ETF and we just go straight to a spot?
It is possible. I would say right now, the way things are lined up, that's not really the way it's supposed to happen. You know, I mean, like right now, as you said, it's like futures market, it builds interest, open interest and trading volume, and they can use that to basically surveil the spot market. That's the current thesis of how we can get these things through. So if that's the way this needs to go for the next asset, we're looking at years away, like multiple years probably, before we see another spot ETF launch on another asset. That's like kind of like just what this administration has decided is required, though. There's nothing in law that says like these are the steps you need to go through to get an ETF, right?
That's good to know.
If you get something like a bunch of these spot markets, these exchanges to come on board and do surveillance sharing agreements, theoretically that could speed things along. If you get a market structure bill out of Congress that defines whether these things are securities or commodities, and actually defines like whether the CFTC has oversight over those assets or the SEC has oversight over those assets. There's a lot of like things up in the air. There's a lot of disagreements between the CFTC and the SEC. So you need a lot of these things cleared up, I think, before you get another asset. But there's a few catalysts, particularly if you see a Republican come in based on how positively they're talking about this space, that could help catalyze some of this stuff. But we have a deadline for the Solana filings from 21 shares towards the end of March in 2025. I think it's highly unlikely these things get approved based on what I'm saying. Even if we do see like a Republican victory and they come in and they decide they want to be pro crypto, like how much time does that leave them to put somebody in the SEC that's running it before the end of March? Not much, really, right? So who knows? I don't really, I don't have a crystal ball. I'm just guessing, but I think it's rather unlikely. But the next one is most likely to be Solana, based on what I'm hearing from these different issuers, what we're seeing just from them filing. But even then, even if you talk to them, most of them, the people they're talking to, they're primarily interested in Bitcoin. And then there's a huge drop off before, and they're asking questions about ETH. And then there's another drop off, and they're asking about Solana, and really not asking about much else. So these issuers, like, yeah, they could theoretically possibly launch one if Ripple is decided to be not a security, or if we already know that like Doge and Litecoin are commodities. But is there enough demand for these issuers to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not more, to launch an ETF that we don't know? They don't know what the demand will be. I'm sure somebody, a small issuer, might do that, but it remains to be seen. So I think if I had to put my money on the next one, it would probably be Solana. But again, based on like what the current precedent is, which again is not like anything written in stone, that could be years away.
Well, I know that we'll get a gauge on the Republican sentiment on crypto here at the Bitcoin Nashville convention, which I know you'll be there.
Oh, you're going to be there?
Yeah, he's
oh, you're a speaker. Yeah, that's right, man. That's awesome.
Are you guys going to be there?
Yeah, well,
we'll
the
see
team
you
will
there.
be here. I'm not sure if Dave is going to quite make it.
I'm still trying to move around some things. We had our family trip planned with a soccer game in New York, so currently in a battle with the
I
wife.
remember I talked to you about this in consensus.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens. But you know, James, you're giving some really good insight here. The fact that, you know, a lot of people don't think about how much money it costs to create these ETFs and file them, and is it even worth it? And then I honestly did not know, like, I thought it was just like, I thought it was a law. You had to have a futures, and then, but apparently it's up to the discretion of the commissioners and the chairman. And so it'll be very interesting to see what sort of acceleration we get with a new head at the SEC, a more pro-crypto head at the SEC. And so very interesting. I just want to implore the audience, go follow James on X. This is him and Eric are the only two people you really should be putting any weight on information you get as far as ETFs. So this is his handle. Go follow him. A lot of great insight, a lot of great threads. James, as always, my friend, we appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us. And we look forward to bringing you on again, man.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Take care, brother.
Have a good weekend.
Thank you. So Solana next.
Yeah, but it's March, man. You know, the crypto is impatient, so I'm sure they'll.
Well, it gives us more time to try to front run that, right?
Yeah. Which, if you are a Solana fan, we do got that Solana video dropping here in about an hour. So we're excited to share that one with you. I think that's one that we covered quite heavily in the past, and you know what? We've taken a little break. It's time to revisit Solana, and there's a lot of big updates coming up. We got the Blinks, we got the Fire Dancer, and we got the potential ETF that, well, the application is in. We're just waiting for the approval. March, maybe, I don't know.
2025?
Yeah.
We'll see what happens. With that being said, I want to give one more thank you to our channel sponsor, Cam's Blue Wire Technology. Make sure to visit bluewiretech.com if you want to learn how they can help your business scale and grow and maximize your networking, IT, and cybersecurity. Rocco. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and big thank you to our special guest, James from Bloomberg. Make sure to watch the Solana video, guys. Until then, have a great weekend. We'll see you on Monday.
Sin City, crypto. Everybody know we here for entertainment and info. Gonna show you how to get that big dough. So every day stay tapped in for big facts, no capping. With Bitcoin, if you're in, then you win. We divide the pie with no fraction. It's Big Rob, David. I spit the game, but they gave it. Named according to your favorite. I got dry powder, why save it? To the OGs, new beginners. Special shout out to the well members. Buy the dip, sell winners. Ain't really nothing you can tell sinners. Tune in for the latest new flavors. They gonna teach us mean coins. They polarizing like barbecue chicken pizzas. I laugh with a major grin. Laggers, we trade them in. Baddies, they came to sin. And sinners gon' play to win. Screaming hola till my bags are flowing over. Hold ya to the moon and to the solar. Won't don't be letting FOMO control ya. It's over when the finger tornado close ya.